Hey everyone, this is your OG, and this is another Godforge video. It is Thursday again, and that means we're bringing you a weekly podcast speed recap. This week we have fellow content creators JKG and Charlemagne on the podcast to discuss how games can serve both new players and the hardcore gamers at the same time. We are also iterating and improving as always, so you'll get to see your OG for the first time. Brace yourself. And we are going to bring you the headlines from this week's discussion. Without a moment wasted, let's optimize.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Fateless podcast episode. Joining me from the Fateless team is going to be Dirk, and then we've got two returning guests in Brandon and Charlemagne.
All right, so we are going to get this all set up, and we're going to add this as well. So here we are for this week's Fateless podcast speed recap. We have chosen Dirk, Charlemagne, and Brandon, or JKG, all on the podcast to discuss how to balance creating a game that is both easy enough for new players to pick up, understand, and to progress in and not get so frustrated that they quit, but also provide, really a complex gaming environment for hardcore gamers to sink their teeth in, as Charlemagne said. So their intros, Charlemagne talks about bringing Godforge content at a really high quality. He's been doing that since he got into the Discord, and it's been great to have him as a part of the community. He's covered Raid for the last 5 years as a free-to-play player. So that experience is really valuable in terms of his feedback and what his channel offers. He also will say y'all a lot if you like that sort of thing. If you're from Texas like he is, then he will supply you all the y'alls you can ask for. So that is Charlemagne. Does a really great job, asks some really great questions. We'll highlight those as we're going through this speed recap. Then up JKG there in the middle to the right. He is a content creator who has also been covering Raid and Grand Theft Auto. I think 5 is what he plays. Does a lot with that. But he will be covering Godforge as well as Charlemagne will both be covering Godforge as well. And we'll be starting next week on the Alpha Cavern testing experience. So that will be exciting. You can look for, I think they have over 70 or 80 content creators now in the channel. A lot of folks, different languages, countries represented, really a pretty cool space to be a part of. So if you're thinking about creating any content for Godforge, the first thing is obviously to sign up for their Discord. You can go to fateless.gg and get onto their Discord from there, and then sign up for their Discord, and then you're just going to want to ask for Susie. Susie is their content the manager for all the CCs and handles bringing you into the fold. But great community. Starts with joining Discord, as we said, so be sure to do that. Okay, and then Charlemagne asked the first question. He said, what, types of player, there's a lot of different types of players, and no game really can serve all players. How do you bridge the gap between the casual and the serious gamer? So Dirk mentions that, a lot of new players, you want it to feel strong early on. He said he thinks that maybe they made it a little too strong on their last run through, so they want to kind of give you a good team, but maybe not the best team, because he found like not a lot of people needed to change their teams or really progress their teams. They just kind of got the teams they needed fairly early on and then built them. And so they're going to try to tweak that, he said, a little bit coming into this next alpha that we're going to be experiencing here in the next week. He says there are still guaranteed heroes, but they're tweaking on exactly how that works, so that you just don't get too good of a team so fast that it isn't that challenge of trying to figure out which hero can do what mechanics and then progress up through as you get better heroes to replace them. He's looking for how best to turn that casual player into a more serious gamer. He said that's part of the discussions that they have and the work they're looking at. And then he mentions Scotty real quick, and that Scotty is a very impressive rare. So we're just going to jump off real quick to Raven Pyro's gaming website, ravenpyros.com, and we're going to show you Scotty real quick. Now, she is a rare champion from Asgard, and she's an eternal affinity, which means, she's not strong or weak to any. She's a disruptor archetype, so she's looking to place freezes, in this case, debuffs and disables, and she's a chaos archetype. She has a 50-50 chance to attack 3 enemies and place freeze, 85% chance to do speed down. Also, freeze impacts turn meter effects, cuts turn meter effects by 50%. So you can see if you can keep a steady layer of freeze on your opponents, they aren't going to get around to either their regular basic and core skills or their ultimate, and you can really control, and as we've heard, control is a big piece of progressing deeper into the cavern. So Scotty punches way above her weight is a rare, Dirk's saying, so we just figured we'd show you why that may be. And of course, she reduces the target's divinity by 10% when attacking any of them under freeze. So, really cool to see. And that is Scotty. Okay. Now, he mentions no cost to move gear around to different heroes, which I feel like, in my opinion, that means we got to look at gear the same way we look at heroes, like kind of look at them separately. Like, I'm going to be looking to build the best gear sets I can, regardless of who it goes on, or not as much thinking about who it goes on, just trying at first to build maybe the best of each kind of set. I also think there's going to be gear sets that sort of give you certain stats as like typical. So like you may not be able to build a high attack defense piece because it may just not offer those stats. And so I think there's not going to be as much creativity in that regard, but it'll be, how do I use this to its most appropriate and highest use case, which is a great thing to be fighting towards and to be building towards. So that is how I see that working, but we will definitely confirm as we get into the alpha and start messing around with gear and looking at how best to manage our gear. All the stats, he says, can be found in the gear. So all stats can be improved by putting gear on them. He says they have Dirk talks about the gear here, and he just talks about how it's quality versus like stars, where like Raid, you have like 3, 4, 5, 6 star gear. Well, they have quality ratings. So like crude, damaged, superior. These are the ratings that would determine if something is higher or lower, sort of almost like rarity. So that's interesting to note, and we'll have to see how many of these different quality levels there are. Is there 5 or 6? We'll have to find that out as we get into the alpha and start getting gear drops ourselves. He talks about attunement and attuning your gear. He said it's really exciting for min-maxing, but it will probably not be fully in for the alpha. He says, yeah, it's great, you can move gear around, but then you lose those attunements. Those are sort of your that piece of permanency to that build, and they do want that to be there in a small way. And part of that attunement is you get a bonus for putting like the correct quality of gear on the right archetype of champion. So this is what it is. This is expected for global launch. Nightweave is for the disruptor, leather for the slayer, cloth for the invoker, plate for the defender, and chainmail for the brawler. So this will be these attunements when we're really trying to fine-tune and max out heroes towards the mid and late aspect of the cavern. Okay, then JKG asks if they're going to have like this locked-in 15-20 minute tutorial that you have to go through every single time you start the game, or you create a new account. Charlemagne mentions, yeah, a lot of times they like to do free-to-play challenges and things where you have to come back through and you already know how to play the game. Can you skip the tutorial? Both Dirk and Chosen say, yes, of course you can. And in addition, the tutorial is only about 2 to 3 minutes long. So while it is skippable, it's not even that painful to begin with. Neither of them wanted something where you're locked in for, however long, just following this what did Dirk say? The railroad tracks almost that they force you to follow. So that's part of that, beginner versus advanced. How quickly do you get outside of that beginner track and you can start making choices is what more advanced players want. Where beginner players are struggling because they don't understand. And I remember when I started Raid, I didn't for a while understand the true value of accuracy. I credit, thankfully Hell Hades, I think some of the videos, and maybe Ash as well, some of the videos were the first things I found explaining accuracy, and it was like, oh my word. And I'm sure the people who were really close to the game knew all about that, but I was playing it very kind of casually from my phone. And so I wasn't watching any real YouTube content on it. And I went to look for the first time because I was like, man, I just can't seem to get this kit to do what it says it's going to do. And so I thank you to Hell Hades for that one. But, sometimes very obvious things that, folks who love the game and understand all the aspects of it just can't see how someone doesn't see. So this is what much of this discussion was about, is how to balance those two things. And so that, fast players are not slowed down by the beginners. Everyone has space to go at their own pace. Also, they talk about having like tips provided while you're playing, and Charlemagne makes a great point about, hey, can they be relevant? Not like, oh, in this instance, here's all the information we could possibly give you. You have to figure out what is relevant to you in this instance. I mean, it does hide sort of the mechanics of how to beat things, which I'm sure it was the intention, but it also doesn't help a player without any other assistance get past that point in the game, and tends to probably lead to them quitting. So they were talking about a Godforge wiki codex, basically a place in game where you could have all the information, and shows it says like you sit back and just be reading through it when you want to like chill out and learn, or if that's something you want to do. He said, but obviously this won't provide you any kind of assessments. It's just like that raw info. So the CCs like myself and others will be doing that content on how do you take that raw info and turn it into content, strategy, and assessments that create creative content for you guys. Charlemagne then mentions providing like more targeted guidance, as I was saying, and then so that way you're not like overwhelmed by the amount of information that sometimes could be in these games. And JKG also mentions that too later. We'll touch on it as he gets into that avalanche of information that can come down on you. So Chosen and Dirk both say, and the philosophy seems to be, they don't want you to have to go outside the game to get info on how it works, which makes sense because that breaks that gameplay. It breaks that immersion into the gameplay. So you want to build in intuitive, info and tips and things that kind of guide the player to keep figuring things out. You don't want them to stop. That's like failure. So you don't want to give it to them either, because then, as Dirk has said, and I think Simon has said as well, then it doesn't feel like it's worth anything. But that balance is truly probably the art of making games, right? So I love that they're right on that edge, and they're figuring it out, and they're iterating right in front of us, allowing us to be extra eyes and to be, this a sounding board and this community that can say, oh, that feels good, that feels not sure yet, or let's see, and I think the community has been very very good for that. So I'm excited to see what Alpha brings next week as we start live streaming. EuroG is planned to go either at least the first 24 hours. We're going to go day on, stay on, Marine Corps style, and go 24 straight. How long I go after that will depend on, am I getting stuck somewhere? Do I need to farm a lot more? Am I, depending on that, if I can continue to push, I'll probably try to go for the first 36 or so before I time out for a 4-hour nap or something like that, and then come back. But I'm going to be pushing it pretty hard, at least for the first 2 days. The people in my world are aware and know that's coming, and they know I was a Marine, so they know how ridiculous I can get with that. So as you can see, I'm set up down here in the basement because it's hot in summer here in New England, and I wanted to be able to record day night, whatever we got to do. So we're coming to you from the dungeon downstairs, and this is how we'll be covering next week's launch of the alpha testing. Okay, so we don't want to go outside the game, but there are some great resources outside the game, and as I showed you, we had Raven. Pyros.com. There's also Scrolls of Anubis is another one that is a great website, teaches you a lot of different pieces that you might be interested in early archetypes, affinities, alliance, all this sort of thing. Nicholas does a great job at Scrolls of Anubis. So these are some of the websites you can look to right now. And Raven has done a really phenomenal job. Has your countdowns right here as to how 5 days, 19 hours until the first alpha. And then he also has an alpha section here that just shows you the 67 heroes. And any one of them that you go into, you can see their stats. You can rank them up and see or promote them and level them up and see how their stats change. Only the HP, attack, and defense, from what we've seen, go up. And then there'll be basically footage, that we can prove these were his stats. And then there's a short, usually video, or a couple content creators can drop in videos for that hero in terms of how they see him, or how they would build him, or what teams he could work for. So it's a great way to both promote all kinds of content creators and provide a great deal of information for you, the gamer, in one place for you to make decisions as to how to build out your heroes. And this shows his stats relative to his rarity as an uncommon. All right, back to the video. And I just want to thank both Raven Pyros and Nicholas from Skulls of Anubis for all the hard work that they've been doing to provide us spaces to gather all this info we need readily available early on. So also, just to add this in, I'm aligned with Raven Pyro's website in that I think it's a great tool, and I signed up as a content creator, but I am not receiving or planning to receive compensation for it. It's just something we're all sort of pulling together and working on together. I just want to make that clear. This not money being transferred. We're just joining up and seeing a common cause, if nothing else. So if you think that's worthy and you're a content creator, jump on in and join. He can get you set up. You'll have your own profile where you'll show your links and things like that, help you promote your videos. So I think it could be great for all the content creators. And he's doing this out of his own pocket and on his own time, so definitely cool, and we hope to provide great analysis and things that can help you in your gaming experience. And I think one of the points that I want to make out of that is content creators are vital to a community that wants to balance new players versus veteran experienced players in the same game, because content creators break down the complex info into more easily understandable and better packaged forms, allowing new gamers to progress further than they may, and therefore keep them from quitting like far earlier. So I think content creators are a big piece of how you bridge that gap between the new gamer and the really experienced gamer, and having both of them engaged by the same game. Because no one wants a game that's too easy. No one wants a game that's too hard that you don't feel like you can beat it at all. Okay, so then Dirk mentions there are small hero pools, just as we had speculated, and basically that RNG percentage that we saw in terms of what, you finish this level, you have a 15% RNG chance to get a hero. It is been confirmed now that out of that hero, there's maybe 5 heroes in that pool, probably with even chance to get all of them, I would imagine. And your story is a matter of which one you get or how many times you farm it, if you want to get all of them or get multiple copies of one to awaken them fully. All different strategies to how to use your energy, and we'll get into that as we start playing the alpha. Okay. Balance. They talk about balance between wanting all the heroes in the game as fast as you can, and obviously we all want that. That's that's the draw. That's what's pulling us. Versus enjoying getting heroes and using them. And Dirk makes a good point, and he's made it before, but about how, like, if you get too many of a certain high rarity and you never have the materials or commodities to grow that hero and actually make them useful, then it really kills the value or kills the joy and excitement of getting that hero. And then when you're just not gonna be able to use them anytime soon, or maybe not at all. And I totally get that from Raid. I've gotten heroes in the last like 3 or 4 months that would have made me so excited. I mean, Ragash, I think I got Prince Kaimar. I mean, heroes you've been like waiting for in that early mid game, and like at this point I was like, I'll put some gear on them, I guess, because I have so much gear. It's flowing out everywhere. I turned my Raid account over to Fudge Boss for doing the research for me. I let him play it, and it just said, if you want to clean up the gear, there's hundreds of pieces of 6-star gear that I don't even have the time to start managing and working through. But yeah, I've noticed that. I felt that same thing. So I like that they're already starting the game from the very beginning with that in mind and how to counter that. They talk about, okay, if something does come out and it's broken, and the way that the philosophy they see working best is that, you know, they would introduce new heroes that would basically be able to be a counter or some element to that. But they don't want to see only certain teams working on content. And then if you don't have those heroes, that you don't have the team, it doesn't work. So I get that, you know, totally do. And if, small plug for myself here, if you haven't seen, we did a video on bleed debuff and some teams and some heroes that you could look at, including Voltclock, Hoplite, Lady Zoc, Dracula. Really interesting. So I will leave that in the comments below if you want to check out some early team concepts around the bleed debuff, which we keep hearing and hinted at as being pretty powerful. Then Dirk confirms imprints. He says all rare or higher heroes have passives, and so those heroes can then be sacrificed to create an imprint, and that imprint can be either put on weapons or used as like a dupe to awaken that hero levels 1 through 5. We've seen the awakenings, and so then when you take a hero and you extract their passive to get their imprint, it's about a 50% reduction in the passive. So if it gets 5% of something, you're probably going to get 2.5%. If it gets 10%, you're going to get 5%. So we're building a list of all the passives and imprints. So we'll share that with you as soon as we have it fully complete. But that is how it works. Charlemagne asks, like, what if you imprint a hero's passive, like Ramsey's passive, on a weapon and give it to Ramsey's? Like a hero's passives imprint on the hero's weapon. He said they're looking at things like that, but that's probably not going to be something you're able to do because it can create some broken things, and then wasn't allowing them to do things with passives because of the potential to stack it on itself. So it looks like we will not be able to imprint a weapon and then give it to the hero with the passive that we took the imprint from. But we'll be able to put it on anyone else and things like that. So that is really good information to know. Charlemagne also asked about like all these variations for testing and all the different levels of stacking, awakening, ascension, leveling, you know, all these different pieces, gear, and what does it look like on Fateless's side? And he said, well, you know, they're handling it pretty solidly. They're looking at barrier actually as a mechanic that could be broken. Has a possibility, as they say, what they define broken as is it has an infinity loop ability. It could be looped into infinity. That's what they're looking to prevent. And so any of the stack features can have that. So they're looking at it, making sure it's not like a Wixwell type thing from Raid, where it gets broken and then that's the only really hero that you can use. And I don't have Wixwell. I never got him. I won key Ultra Nightmare, but I've never had Wixwell. I just didn't ever get him. So, you know, I never could build a team around him. I've had several attempts at unkillable teams and things like that. But the team I have now does it one key fine. And so I'm okay with not really pushing it too much harder. But anyways, that's what they talk about. So Dirk also mentions you can't use the same ultimate twice in the same turn. So there are some like fail safes in place to keep any kind of broken features, like sort of, if we don't catch it in the kit, like these overarching environmental conditions will catch them. So that's a smart sort of secondary layer that they are building in. They want to be quick, he said, at pushing out new heroes. He said, you know, obviously Raid has, 1,000 heroes, something like that. And he said, you don't want to come out with 50 or 60 like some of these new games are and think you're going to compete with people who are used to having almost 1,000 or more heroes. So they're still on track for 200 for global launch. And of course, they have plans to push out several more heroes after that and throughout fusions and events and all those different things that we would expect them to do once the game launches fully. So he said they're key to having a quick pipeline to be able to push those heroes out, and that can also be their balance or their counter against any OP or broken pieces that might emerge in the meta. They can present alternatives. And then Dirk does talk about like speed versus initiative and how the divinity system helps that balance with thinking like just go speed, more speed. He said you really have to consider your initiative and you have to consider getting that ultimate because it can really make a big difference. He talks about how like accuracy and resistance were typically thought of as like secondary stats, but that the term he used was they are you must be this tall to ride barrier for entry, and as long as you had above it, you were good. You could land things. You were good. Idea that Euro-G had, like, what if there were fluctuations in the battle output of a battle, right? You're going through a wave, and those fluctuations were caused by the environment. Now, this is only like once you get to a certain level of difficulty, maybe, or something. You could have weather like rain, snow, or wind, which would make it harder to land debuffs or impact speed. You might slip. You could have heat, which would maybe sap your endurance or your HP or resistance over time, stuff like that. I don't know, just a thought that I had in terms of making it another wrinkle is that you could have environmental conditions that could impact, very, very temporarily, like one turn it does, next turn it doesn't have the impact. It's like there's a random chance to it. I don't know, just some thoughts as to how it could be further diversified. Then JKG asks about the UI perspective and says, will there be screens that like a first-time player just goes into and gets absolutely bombarded and overwhelmed with the complexity of the game and all that they need to learn and just quits? He said, has there been efforts to avoid that sort of landslide? And Chosen says, absolutely. And Dirk says, yes, absolutely. They're working to have it so that things can be chosen on like clicked on the side and brought up for more information, but that the UI is pretty clean. Otherwise, you're not getting dumped a ton of information all at once. And so that's a good sign. And then Chosen mentions the 1-star and the 2 stars in the cavern being a little tricky to tell, like, do I have the 2 brawlers or the condition met? He mentions like this idea of pop-up player cards allowing for a higher level of data to be kind of like hidden or to be a choice that you could bring out. But what if like you meet the conditions for 2 stars and the 2 stars light up at the top and then oh, I'm good to go by attempting this. If I get it, I have the 2-star condition met. Just a thought. That way before you start the level that you've put in the right either champions are involved. It might be tricky if like one of the conditions must be met during the sequence. That might be harder to do, but maybe it shows you're eligible for it. Just a thought. Still some quality of life upgrades they say that are, obviously need to be made, but they said you got to remember, like, we're leading up to global launch. There's still quite a bit of time. Then they get to the usual questions. Since Charlemagne, this was his first time on the channel, he said he would choose to have Charlemagne in the game, of course, but he doesn't quite fit into Avalon. He's kind of more like Europe. And Dirk said, yeah, they looked at a few of them like that where they almost needed a new faction for Europe. But they did continue to hint at Robin Hood coming to Avalon. They definitely see that as something that they want to see happen. All right, so yeah, he talks about that. And all right, folks, this was another Fateless podcast speed recap. I hope you enjoyed. This is the final podcast before the alpha begins next week. If you like this recap and you aren't too scared off by my ugly mug, then it would help this channel tremendously if you'd like, subscribe, and I don't know, maybe just write a short novel as to why you find it moving or life-changing. These are just small requests we have. Anyways, take care of yourself, and remember, play smarter.